welcome to Veterinary Tales episode 3, where we are diving deep into the experiences of victims that suffer from the medical bad actors who would rather put their profession, their money, their reputation above the care of their patients. I'm your host, Colleen, and I'm joined by the wonderful co-host and founder of Joey's Legacy, Mr. Scott Fine. Scott, how are you doing today?
Hey, Colleen, how are you doing?
Doing well.
Good.
I'm also excited to announce our guest for tonight, Sharon Athanasiou, who will be telling us all about Vanillabean's story.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for being here, Sharon. So
Sure.
we have another tragic story to tell people. Unfortunately, there's no shortage of them. And why don't you begin with the period of time where Vanillabean came to live with you, and the time period after that, and then work into the tragic outcome.
Sure. We had a wonderful toy poodle named Fluffernutter, who was my first dog ever. And we just absolutely were obsessed. It was so in love with him. And we're like, you know what? I think that he needs a friend. So I knew somebody who had a Maltese available, and I just said, I'm just starting to look around to see, if I click with a dog. And I met Vanillabean, and he just basically wrapped himself around my neck. And I said, oh, check, please. We got to go. He's coming with me. And he was a tiny little thing. And when I brought him home, I remember my poodle did not want to look at me. He was so horrified. And he literally was not making eye contact with me. And I was hysterical. I'm like, I made a big mistake. Oh no, what did I do?
He's jealous. Yeah.
Yes, jealous because he was the only child for a year.
Yeah.
And slowly but surely, they became attached at the hip. It was the best decision I ever made. And everywhere I went, everyone was like, oh, where's Fluffernutter and Vanillabean? Where's Fluffernutter and Vanillabean? Everybody was just in love with them. And they were just so lovable. And, he was a very healthy dog. Never, ever had a health issue. And I was so proud of that. But he did have these teeth that just were terrible. And when I say terrible, you can clean them, and then 2 weeks later, no matter what I did, they looked horrible. His teeth were unusually narrow. And the vet had explained to me that when they're narrow, all dogs have the same amount of teeth. So you're sticking, 40 something teeth in his tiny, 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 tiny mouth, with the teeth being unusually narrow. So you have a gazillion crevices so close to each other that, when they get dirty, the teeth just become in terrible condition very quickly. So we had to get his teeth professionally cleaned about every year to year and a half. Was not the case with my poodle. My poodle's teeth were a lot bigger, even though he wasn't that much bigger than Vanillabean. He was about 7 pounds, whereas Vanillabean was about maybe 4.5. But so we had a friend of ours whose husband was a vet, is still a vet. He was not my regular vet. I had started to go to him, and I didn't really vibe with him on a lot of things. As far as if I wanted to bring some natural and holistic things in, since he was clueless about it, he didn't want to talk about it. He wasn't open to anything. So I said, you know what? I'm going to find a holistic vet. But for dentals, since he was so close to me, and he was a friend, because eventually he and I also became friends, just like I was with his wife. I said, you know what? He'll be good for dentals. And I just laid down the law with him. I said, I don't drop off my dogs for procedures. I wait with them in the waiting room, and I don't want you to take them until you are ready. And then I'm going to sit in your waiting room and wait. And I would like my dog to recover in my lap, not in a cage. Is that acceptable to you? I'm probably maybe one of 3 that he's ever had who has requested something similar to that. But he was okay with it. So I was excited about that because he was doing things as it should be, the way that the mama wants. So I would say many years. We took him to get dentals done there. Always worked out great. Never had even an iota of an issue. Um, and as I said, never a health issue. I mean, this dog was unbelievably healthy. Um, had everybody on a raw diet, supplements, and just I was aware of, doing blood work to check for kidneys and liver and blah blah blah. So I'm a very diligent person when it comes to that, very aware of how to maintain health, and it paid off because he was a very healthy dog. And so it was time for his dental at 11 years of age. I'm moving ahead right now to 11 years of age because really, as far as any health thing goes, there's nothing to speak about literally. So I'm going to jump ahead to that. And it was a very strange day because the morning of the dental, my poodle had a stomach issue. He had indigestion and his stomach was hurting, and he was a little drama king. I knew I could hear the little gas in his stomach, so I knew what it was. But he was, moping and whining, and I was very upset. And I called my holistic vet, and he told me what to get. He told me to get it's I forgot what you call it, but it's something that you get a baby who has gas, and it's all natural. So I had to go to Whole Foods Market and pick it up. And I said, you know what? I think I got to cancel this dental that I have for Vanillabean because my head is all preoccupied with Fluffernutter right now and his stomach issue. I said, I think I have to cancel the dental. So I go to Whole Foods. I buy this thing for Fluffernutter for his stomach. I give it to him. He's better in 20 minutes. It was amazing. I said, oh, I don't have to cancel Vanillabean's dental. I'm just going to go. Fine. Perfect. I don't have to worry about Fluffernutter now. So bring him in. And I always, for dentals, I was always the first client of the day so that we can get it done. And then I wait in the recovery room with Vanillabean. It was always what we always did. And then we wait about half an hour. If everything looks good, we go. We've always had everything look good. So drive up. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh, it's so weird how I almost wasn't going to come today. But I'm glad I'm going and getting it over with. So we go. They're not ready for him yet. As they always did, they really waited until they were completely ready. They were ready, took him in, and then I think like 40 minutes maybe, brings him out, and he's coughing. And the vet tech who did the dental, and she's done several dentals on him, and I knew her, so it wasn't like a new person, said, yeah, it was really weird. He gasped when he came to. I said, oh. I said, okay, how is he now, though? He's okay. And I see him, it's like he's clearing his throat, and then another little cough. And I said, I've never seen that before. Could you get the doctor in? And comes in. And I remember he picked up his stethoscope to put it on his chest. but then he didn't put it on his chest. He took the stethoscope and he just put it back in his jacket and said, "You know what? This is the anesthesia." He's what's the word that he used? He's like almost fighting against coming out of the anesthesia. I said, "You've been giving him dentals for a lot of years, and I've never seen this before. Are you sure?" "Yeah, he's going to be fine. Take him home to relax." Well, I didn't leave for another hour and a half because I was not buying that. And he was like clearing his throat, a little gurgly, very out of it. And what I always liked about getting a dental done there was he would come out of the anesthesia quickly, cleanly, never any issues, would come home and basically be looking for breakfast. I mean, there was never, ever an issue. So for this to happen and it wasn't perfect as usual was alarming to me. So anyway, I'm there. I call the vet tech again. I'm like, "Excuse me, I want the doctor to come in again." I said, "This is not how he is after dental's here. What is going on?" I guess in my mind, I didn't want to believe there's anything wrong, but I was concerned. Again, he said this is the word he used. He's protesting coming out of the anesthesia. I said, "Okay." And in my mind, I'm like, well, you know what? He's 11 now. Maybe as they get older, the anesthesia is a little bit tougher on them. It could be. So I take him home. And as I'm driving home, I'm thinking to myself, wow, every time I get a dental done when I'm driving home, I'm always happy because we got it done. It's perfect. There's no issue. Another year at least without a dental. I'm so happy. I remember driving home and thinking, I'm just not feeling right about this. Something is not right. And I do not believe that it is just the anesthesia. So I go home and I offer him a treat and he does not want to take it. And I'm like, oh, this is a big sign. So I put some peanut butter on my finger. I put it up to his mouth. He wanted to, and he couldn't do it. And I called the vet right away and I said, there's really something wrong. Could you tell me why you think this is the anesthesia? Explain to me your reasoning here. And he just gave me like this explanation that I almost had no choice but to believe. I couldn't really know what else it would be at this point. I was as, I guess, perplexed as I don't know. I was just like, okay, will you be available? Will you be there if I need to call you? Yes, yes. Well, okay, fine. So I'm going to call you if anything else happens. Okay. In my mind, I'm just hoping that this anesthesia wears off. And he just didn't sound right. Then I saw and I heard a little bit of fluid coming out of his mouth. I heard it and I went over to him and I saw it was a little foamy. And I called the vet and he didn't answer my call. Like he didn't come to the phone. And I'm like, no, you have to tell him. He said that he would be available because if something happens, I need his advice. So you need to get him. Well, they tried to get him on the phone and they couldn't get him on the phone. At this point, I was like, okay, am I blowing this out of proportion? There was nothing dramatic happening with him, but he wasn't himself. So my husband came home from work and I said, I'm giving this a little bit more time. I was kind of waiting for him to come home also to see what he thought. I said, I didn't take a shower yet since I've been out. Hold Vanillabean. I need to go take a shower and decide what I want to do. Hopefully, he's going to be improving. I take a quick shower. I come out. I see my husband holding Vanillabean on his shoulder and pacing back and forth with him. He's like, there's something wrong. I'm not sure what it is, but it looks like there's something wrong. It was just that Vanillabean was very lethargic. I opened his mouth and his tongue was gray. His gums were gray. I jumped into my car. I went to the vet. I didn't stop at any light. I don't know how I'm still alive. I just raced there. And I was so angry because now I realized I didn't follow my instincts. And I basically felt like I killed my dog. At this point, it wasn't even the vet. It was me, because I trusted and I let a history with somebody, friends, many, many, many years, I let that override my instinct, and that was killing me. So I ran in and I said, Vanillabean is not going to make it. What are you going to do? And at this point, I called my holistic vet in Tampa. My holistic vet used to be here in this area, but he moved to Tampa. So I would do things remotely with him. Like if I got blood work done, they would fax it to him and we would do, consults that way. And I would go to see him once a year for annuals. Well, I got him on the phone because he knows Vanillabean for years. He was his actual vet. And he would always say, Vanillabean is your, I've had dogs before. Vanillabean is your healthiest dog. I've had other dogs after I got Vanillabean. We've had dogs after that. And Dr. Johnson always said, Vanillabean is your healthiest dog. I got him on the phone and I said, I told him what happened. And I said, at this point, you need to tell this vet what to do because he does not know what the hell he's doing. And I made sure that my dental vet got on the phone with my holistic vet, and this guy, I'm talking about not my holistic vet, the one who was doing the dental. He was just basically at this point in self-preservation mode in the worst way. He was trying to literally make small talk with me while my dog was dying. He was telling me that, oh no, I think he's going to make it. I said, really? What's the percentage of positivity here? 50-50. I said, 50-50 is he's going to make it? I'm like, would you first like to tell me exactly what is going on? And he said to me, I regret not calling you back sooner because as I mentioned before, I had called as he said he was going to be available for me the entire day if anything happened. The last time I called, he never called me back. He said, I regret not calling you sooner. I said, that's great. What is going on? He said that Vanillabean's lung collapsed. And all I kept thinking is, I know anesthesia doesn't do that. So again, I call my friend. I didn't want my husband to come yet, because he was home with Fluffernutter. In my mind, I was still hoping for some miracle to happen. So I called my friend Lisa, and she came and she stayed with me while they're trying to revive Vanillabean or whatever they're trying to do. he really never wanted to say that Vanillabean was dying. So he calls my holistic vet. He says, "Can I have your holistic vet's phone number?" I said, "Okay." I'm like, "Why? Didn't they already talk?" Not a minute later. Now, remember what I said, my holistic vet is in Tampa. My holistic vet calls me a minute later after the vet calls him and says, "Where are you right now?" I'm like, "What do you mean, where am I?" "I'm at the vet's office." He's like, "No, no, are you in the room with Vanillabean?" I said, "No." He said, "Go in there right now. He is dying." So are you grasping that my vet in Tampa had to tell me to go into the room next to me because this vet didn't have the balls to tell me? When that happened, I basically knew that this is a vet who will go into self-preservation mode and never turn back. And I should have just grabbed Vanillabean and ran to another vet. I trusted him. My mistake, fatal mistake, very fatal mistake. So to have my vet in Tampa be the reason that my dog died in my arms, because this other vet wouldn't have done that. But my holistic vet, who, my gosh, I knew him for at that point probably 13 years. He was my regular vet. He is the one who had to call me to tell me, "Go into that room if you want to see your dog alive for his last minutes." And I'm just like, oh my God, this is like a, a horror show. And yeah, he was dying. And at this point, my husband had come. And I guess I was in shock. But then I said, all right, I have to focus for Vanillabean. So I started singing a song that I always sang to Vanillabean. I always sang this song to him. And the dental vet looks at me and he says, "He can't hear you." At this point, there is really nothing else that I can think except that this man actually has like an evil streak. That's pure evil. This is the last communication I'm having with my dog. And that's what I wanted to remember this something positive with, that I was singing to him. And he said, "Oh, he can't hear you." I'm like, I honestly, in my mind, all I kept thinking is, how did nothing ever happen before this? You know, um, and my husband was sitting there with Vanillabean's deceased body crying, and he said, "How did this happen?" And the vet said, "I don't know, but this broke my record."
Doubt it.
Uh, oh, well, you're absolutely right about that. Um, because the attorney that I got involved with this, that, after this, his friend had a dog who died in this vet's hands.
Same thing.
And it was kind of like, well, that's kind of ironic. Goodness knows how many dogs have died in this man's hands, and who knows what excuses he's given as far as how it happened, because you know that he's not taking responsibility for it.
Sharon, how long had you been going to this particular vet prior to the outcome?
Prior to the outcome, just for dentals, 11 years. And I had originally hoped that he could be my regular vet. But like I said, he was very close-minded, very by the book, old school. I was not somebody who wanted to give, you know, 7 vaccines every year, like he would have. And I just saw that we weren't on the same wavelength. So I said, you know what? Time for me to find a holistic vet. I'll keep him for dentals because he followed my wishes with dentals. But I knew him for 11 years, and not only professionally, he was my friend's husband. So he even, came to my house when we had parties at our house. He knew me. He knew that I'm a tough customer, you know. He knew that I didn't stick with him for regular vet care, and he was still fine with doing dentals. And he knew that the only way that I would go to him for dentals is if he did what I, required of him, which is, I don't drop off my dogs and they recover with me, and he was fine with that. So that worked for me. So yeah, about 11 years.
So I guess one of the takeaways is regardless of length of time or any other factors, sadly, anything can happen at any time. And those that trust their vets should trust their vets, with the caveat that something like this can come out of nowhere and just happen.
Absolutely. I mean, look, I'm very well aware of the fact that, oh, I actually have to, before I forget, he was responsible for the death of my neighbor's dog a few months prior.
Was it a dental as well?
It was not a dental. It was a kidney issue. It was her dog was see. I actually recommended him to her, and so her dog had kidney issues, and that was her regular vet. And he started limping on his rear leg very badly. And he said, "Oh, let me bring him in the back and take a look." And he administered Rimadyl, and he the dog went downhill so quickly. I don't even know how many days it was. It was less than a week, and ultimately died because of his negligence. And his response was two things: "I'm only human." That was his excuse. "I'm only human." Not an apology. Not an apology. "I'm only human, and I should have done blood work before. How about I ask the pet parent if I can administer something before I do it?" Or how about you are the dog's vet and you are fully aware of the kidney issues? And still, after that, I still took my dog to him for a dental. But in my mind, I said, I'm not going to him for anything else, so I'm safe. I don't have anything to worry about. He's not going to administer anything because he knows how I am. So, of course, when I told my neighbor what happened, she's like, "I can't believe that you still went to him after what happened with our baby." And I said, "You're absolutely right. I my head was in the clouds. I should have not gone back, but in my mind, you know, all the years of successful dentals, I did."
And is he
And
still in practice?
he is in practice, and um I warn everybody about him. And a lot of people go to him because he's a very, very well-known vet in this area. And I will warn people and they'll say, "Oh, I go to him." And I explain my story. Um, and every now and then, maybe like once a year, I'll look at his reviews and I'll see a nightmare posted. And, you wonder how many there are that don't post, or how many, settled out of court. Or, I mean, I could briefly tell you about my, experience with an attorney. I got an attorney who was so horrified by the whole thing, and the self-preservation mode, and the lack of an apology. Oh, I would like to add one more thing, because this was in 2013. So sometimes it takes a while for it to all come back. And sometimes I feel like I'm pushing it in the back of my mind sometimes. But that happened on a Friday. And the next day I called him and I left a message at his home, because, like I said, I was friendly with him and his wife, and at the office. And he definitely had Saturday hours, so he was there. And I left a message and I said, I need to talk to you. Because the next morning when I woke up, I basically had a nervous breakdown. I mean, I won't even go into details, but it was bad. I never experienced anything like this. I mean, up until that point, I never lost a dog. I mean, I didn't know what that was even like. So for it to happen in this manner, I mean, it was
Brand new.
ugh. I woke up and I literally had a nervous breakdown, and I called him and I said, I need to talk to you because I need to make sense of this. Could you help me with that? I need to make sense of this, because I realized driving home without my dog, I realized I really don't know how his lung collapsed. Why isn't he able to tell me this? Why is he like just not trying to put some closure on this, at least? And so I called him at his home and at the office, and he didn't call me back. He didn't call me back until Monday. And his excuse, and at this point, I knew that I was getting an attorney. If he would have called me right away to talk, there's a good chance I wouldn't have gotten an attorney.
Exactly.
He
Yes.
let me boil in this anger for the entire
Right.
weekend.
Right.
And he called me on Monday, and his excuse was, I wanted to give you some time. But I called you.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? Like, what? He was just grasping at straws at this point, and he was just looking more and more like he was just protecting his own self-interest, and it was infuriating. So that's when I spoke to a lawyer friend of mine, and he said, I work with an attorney who is a huge animal lover like me. He was an attorney, but he was the my friend is the he manages a law office, and so he had an attorney who worked in his office, who he said, I have a feeling he'd want to help you with this. So he worked with me initially pro bono. He was horrified by this, and that's the one who mentioned it to a friend, and his friend is like, yeah, that killed my Yorkie. So that made him even more passionate about wanting to help. And but we initially wanted to do something, and then the vet brought in the American Veterinary Association, and they were very aggressive, and they insisted that because I signed, when you do a dental, you sign off a waiver about the anesthesia. So even though I got a necropsy done, and it said, his lung was collapsed, he had gotten fluid in him, is what the necropsy showed. Fluid was in his lungs, and that's why they collapsed. And basically what happens, my holistic vet explained what happens really. If that happens, you treat the dog for pneumonia, and the dog can come out of it. But not when you don't even put the stethoscope up to the dog's lungs, because I know why he didn't do that. he knew what happened. In my mind,
course.
he knew what happened.
Absolutely. Of
So
course.
to make the gesture of taking out the stethoscope and then not doing it, come on,
Meaningless.
meaningless. Yeah. So we couldn't do anything, unfortunately, because the AVA basically said you'll end up getting is the bill for um our lawyer fees, and you're going to have to pay them. And that intimidated me enough. And my lawyer, he was very upset because he wanted to fight this. Oh boy, he really wanted to. And he said, but when you have the American Veterinary Association involved, there is a very good chance you're going to lose. And there's a very good chance that you're going to end up paying a minimum of $20,000 in expenses and fees. And on top of that, on top of everything,
we're not finding that with Joey's legacy. That's what they want everybody to believe. That's what they've pitched for years. Don't bother. You're going to lose. It's going to cost you all this money. And that's just to deflect the negligence, the malpractice of their members.
yeah,
and hopefully you
exactly.
take the bait.
Yes.
And
yes.
we don't
And I
have those
did.
kinds of outcomes nowadays.
I wish. I mean, I
Yeah.
wish that I would have. I guess. Well, first of all, I can tell you that I think I'm probably glad that I didn't go through with it, because mentally I was not prepared. I was ruined. I mean,
I understand.
I don't know how I would have done. And if we would have lost and I would have had to pay that to add in insult to injury,
Right.
I don't even know. I mean,
I understand.
yeah.
I know.
So
Let me ask you, Sharon,
sure.
when you, after the outcome and you started to tell people about it, people that also engaged with this vet, do you know how many actually decided to find another vet? How many continued to go to that vet? Do you know?
I could just go by the reactions. I know for sure they were shocked. I know that there was nobody who said, "Oh, well, I'm sorry to hear that, but he's been a great vet for me." Nobody said that. Of course, maybe they didn't want to insult me, but I do know somebody who completely stopped going to him. Actually, I know two people who stopped going to him.
Good.
Yeah. Other people, like, their eyes widened when I told them the story. So I'm hoping that, it made a difference. And, it, when they were ready to go to a vet again, I hope they thought about that. That's all I can think. But for sure, two people,
Okay.
know.
That part's good.
Yeah.
All right, so we're about out of time. Do you have any final thoughts or anything you want to tell the
Yes,
group?
one more thing that I really want to stress is, when you have a vet who did some negligence that caused your dog harm in any way, if you go back to that vet and you see the vet going into self-preservation mode and not doing something and denying what's going on, take your dog and run to another vet. I see even in our group, I see a lot of people who say, well, they're trying to figure it out, or they're doing tests and this and that. You know what? Sometimes it's a very cut and dry thing, and you know darn well that the vet is not admitting what he did and what happened.
Right.
If you have the slightest inkling that that's what's happening, get your dog. Don't walk, run out and go to another vet. You'll deal with the negligence with this vet later, but don't do what I did. I know that if I would have taken my dog and ran to another vet, I probably could have saved him, because he would have just been treated for pneumonia. but by not having any treatment, that's what happened. And
Yeah.
when vets go into that self-preservation mode, they sometimes will not budge out of it. And that is it. They are tunnel vision. They are not admitting. So when they don't admit, they're not going to treat for what you think happened. So if, let's say your dog has a horrible reaction to vaccines, is on death's door because of vaccines. If the vet says, oh, it's definitely not the vaccines, even though we just gave it 2 days ago, and 2 days ago is when this happened to your dog, that's it. If your vet is not budging, pick up your dog and run and go to another vet who will possibly understand what you're talking about and not be worried about
At that point, you're dealing with a bad actor.
Mhm.
You need to cut and run as
Yeah.
fast as you can. You're absolutely right. Well, Sharon, obviously we're very saddened by this story.
Thank you.
You're in our group. You're one of our admins. We see this kind of thing way too often. The majority of the vets out there are competent, provide proper care. Sometimes you run into a chucklehead like this guy, and as soon as you know you're dealing with a bad actor, run. Absolutely.
Yes. Don't expect them to change their tune.
Yeah.
If they already are not admitting that there's a problem, it's not going to change.
A deceptive practitioner, absolutely need to run. Colleen, do you have any final thoughts?
Just thank you for sharing your story. I know it's a hard one to tell, and there's so many more cases. So the more we talk about it, the more we share our community, the more advocacy we put out there. Hopefully things will start to change the tide. So thank you.
I hope so. I hope people follow their instincts. If you feel like there's something wrong, if something's not right,
Probably is.
Exactly. And you don't have to wait for somebody in your right there and then to acknowledge it. If you need to take your dog elsewhere to work with it and to acknowledge it, that's what you have to do.
Right.
So whatever you have to do to alleviate whatever's going on, just know it may not be at the vet's office of the vet that actually caused the problem. As a matter of fact, it's very likely that you're not going to find a resolution there.
Right. All right, Sharon, thanks again for being here. I know it took some courage, and it's hard to revisit such a tragedy. All right, so I guess we'll say goodnight to everybody. And
thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. Thanks for being here. Thank you, Colleen.
Thank you.
And we'll see you guys in 2 weeks. Sunday night, 8 p.m. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, 2 weeks on our new platform. This will be the last episode shown in this group. So the next one, you'll want to be sure you join the Joey's Legacy membership, which you can do $5 a month or $60 annually. We also have semi-annually and monthly benefits you can do, but be sure to do that before November 1st, because that's when we will be making the shift onto our very exciting new social platform.
Looks great. Thanks to you and Lori. Thank you. All right, guys. Have a good night. See you.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Night.